we start with a song.
Yes.
That is right. This beautiful drum,
What is that one?
bear, bear
He's
hide.
deeper than the elk.
Yeah. And it rings forever. She's a beaut. All right, let's do a chant that is a chant done for saying hello and welcome to everyone, to everything that is here, everyone that is here visiting with us, surrounding us. And it can also mean goodbye and thank you. And this is a chant that was gifted from Spirit to a friend of mine, Alan, in California. And it's really close to the way that we say it in the native tongue, Yatahe. But the way he received it is Yatawe. Yatawe. And it goes like this. Yatawe, 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 Yatawe. Let's do another one. Yeah. Okay, this is another really nice, easy chant. And this chant was called the Ancient Altar Song. This chant was gifted to two separate people at two separate times, and they were in different parts of the world. And as they traveled, sharing this chant, eventually they ended up in the same place. And they realized that they had been gifted the same song from Spirit. So to me, that tells me that these songs that are coming from Spirit are not just for me or for you, or, they're for everyone. Because these songs and chants are healing songs that we need in our lives, in our walk, and in our healing. And this chant goes like this. Yo eh hi ya 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 ya, yo eh hi ya 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 do. Yo eh hi ya 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 ya, yo eh hi ya 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 do. Yo eh hi ya 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 ya, yo eh hi ya 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 ya, yo eh hi ya 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 do. So we do 2 rounds of the same, and then it changes, and then 2 rounds of that change. So let's do it again. Yo eh hi ya 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 ya, yo eh hi ya 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 do. Yo eh hi ya 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 ya, yo eh hi ya 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 do. Now it shifts. Yo eh hi ya ya ya. And when we sing chants and stuff, we end it with do or ho, okay? So let's do it again. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. That's too low. Let's go up a little more. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 still low. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. One more time. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. Yo, hey, ay, 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 yo. You are hired. All right. I can drum all night, so. Do it. Okay. Since we're here tonight speaking about healing ourselves, and we need to heal ourselves before we can turn around and offer, help and guidance and the healing, with anyone. We need to start here at home. And I think the best way for me to share this is to share my story. Like we mentioned earlier, I grew up in Carlsbad, and we lived like out in the middle of nowhere. Our closest neighbor was 7 miles away. So we didn't have sidewalks or streets or street lights, nothing. All we had, and what I grew up with at different ranches that we lived at was, out in the middle of the desert, which, oh my God, was the best gift that I could have ever received. I grew up with my earth mother around me, her nature around me. I remember from the age of 3 years old, my dad was in farm labor, and the ranches that we lived at, those days, they were all cotton growers. So at the age of 3, I was out in the cotton fields building little mountains of cotton, that I was picking for my folks. And they'd come along and put the little mountains in their bags. And as the day was getting hot and stuff, and I was getting tired and sleepy, I'd be like, my mom would see me doing this, and okay, mija, vente. So she'd take me, and the cotton was big and tall, really healthy. mom would take me and dig the sand underneath the cotton. Dig in the sand until she hit the damp sand. So that I was laying on cool sand, and I'd fall asleep there. And so, before I fell asleep, I'd be laying under the cotton, watching the butterflies, the ladybugs, the spiders and the bees and all of that. And, looking back, I'm thinking, I didn't have babysitters or anything like that. My babysitter was nature. And nothing ever bit me or hurt me. So I had the best babysitter there is. So I'd wake up, and my mom would hear me yelling, because they kept going, the rows were long. And she'd hear me calling for her, Mommy, Hug, I'm over here. All she could see was maybe the top of my head. So I'd just take off running to catch up wherever they were. But, that growing up that way, as I got older, I remember I was maybe like 5 years old, 6 years old. I'd be sound asleep, and in my head I would hear something in my head calling me, Yolanda, wake up. And I'd wake up and it would be at sunrise, Still a little dark out, but the sun was coming up. And I would hear, get up, come outside, come on, hurry up, So I'd wake up and put on my little jeans, my t-shirt, and I'd make my braids and my shoes, and I'd walk out the door. And here come the cats and the dogs and all of that. I'd walk out the door, so I'd start walking out to the desert. And every time there'd be this big horny toad. And he was so big that I had to use both my hands to pick him up and hold him. A horny toad. Every time. And this went on, for years. And I'd pick him up and he'd say, what took you so long? And I'd be talking to him, and I'd take off walking in the desert. He'd kind of guide me where he wanted me to go. And so I'd be talking and singing and all of this. I was forever singing. I loved singing and music. So here we are walking down the desert, and and he's talking to me, and the sun was coming up, and it was starting to get warm. You know how it is here in New Mexico. So then he'd guide me to get under one of the mesquites, and dig the sand. I remember my mom doing it when I was a baby, so I would dig the sand and make a pillow for myself and lay down and put the horny toad on my chest. And I'd be and singing, and then all these animals would come by. Here comes a rabbit, a jackrabbit, the quail, a tortoise. And as everyone was coming, I'd be talking, hey, good morning, and I'd hear them talking. We said, what are you doing, They'd all ask, even a coyote once in a while. Once in a while, though, a tarantula would come. I didn't like tarantulas. Didn't want them around. So then after a while, I'd just fall asleep because it was so peaceful. I'd just fall asleep. And then back in the background, I would hear my mom, Yolanda, where are you? It's time to come home, So I would wake up and the horny toad was still on my chest, sound asleep, so I'd wake him up, shake him, wake up,
It's like, oh.
rub my belly. He loved for me to rub his belly. I would rub his belly and he would just, you know. And then I'd put him down, leave him under the mesquite, you know, where it was still cool, and I'd walk out and head home to the house cleaning, the diaper changing, the cooking, all of that, you know, in those days, that's what we grew up with. You know, I became a mother at a very, very young age. And, it was a good life. You know, I was blessed where my parents loved us very much. And there was 11 of us. 7 of us grew up together. I lost three sisters that were stillborn, and then an older brother that died at the age of 3 years old. I was 2. But it was a great life. And that connection with Earth Mother has never left me. That has been my walk. And that has been what has brought all the gifts that I have that I share now with people. And that connection was also with Spirit. Spirit was always with me, guiding me. When I was 14, we moved to California, landed in the Central Valley. And I graduated high school there. And moved to San Jose, the big city. I became a city girl. You know, I knew I couldn't go to college because my folks couldn't help me to do that. So I was smart enough to realize that I needed to have a career, because I always helped my mom and dad financially as much as possible. So I wanted to be able to keep doing that. So I knew that I had to find something to help to support myself and my family that was back in Visalia. So I ended up in corporate at the age of 19. I joined the title insurance business, became a delivery girl, and worked my way up to escrow officer. You know, in those days it was great because they trained you. They didn't expect you to come in knowing everything. They were willing to train you, so that was a big blessing for me. So I did that. And then when in 1974, I graduated high school in 1968. I'm giving away my age.
From Carlsbad?
No, by then we were in Visalia.
Oh,
yeah.
Because I graduated in 68 from Carlsbad.
Oh, we would have been together. Wow. What was it? What was the high school called then?
Carlsbad High School.
Yeah. The mid school was Alta Vista, I think it was.
And I was to Eisenhower.
I only got to go to my freshman year.
Oh, okay.
And then we moved. So.
Our
All
paths
right,
crossed.
sis. But yeah, you know, I graduated in 68, went to San Jose and got into corporate. And you know, when we leave the land, we forget all of this stuff. You know, you forget about all the magic that we knew growing up. Because we all experience it in one way or another, you know. And it's that magic that we want to remember and, you know, bring back to ourselves. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, let me see, where was I? Yeah, I graduated in 68, went into corporate. I went to work for a title insurance company by the name of first American title. And then I got upset because I figured out, here I had been with the company for 4 years, and they had hired some young kids from college, part-time, it was summer. And they brought those young men in, making more money, working part-time, more money than me, that had been there for 4 years. You know, and oh boy. The Apache the Apache came out, you know, and I went to the president of the company, you know, why are they making, you know, more money than me? I'm already an escrow secretary, and, you know, so I got after them. Well, then, you know, so I quit. I did. I got angry and I quit, and I said, I'm gonna put myself back to college and, you know, get maybe something to help me move forward in business. Well, I went for a semester, my very first semester, and I had moved out of my apartment, and I rented my mom and dad's garage. I paid them rent so I could stay there and I could go to school. Well, one day after, on my way, I get home, I open the front door, and there on the television, in big letters, Alaska, the last frontier. And I'm going, the last frontier, Alaska, the last frontier? Hey, I think I kind of grew up in a frontier. That's the last one on Earth, Mother. That's the last frontier. I have to go see it. I have to go and experience it. I didn't know how I was going to get there. All I knew was I had to go. Spirit plays these tricks on you. I learned that after, never mind, I'm not telling you my age.
We already know.
So,
We did the math.
yeah, you're smart. So, all of a sudden, it got to a point where, like, when you get pregnant and you have a craving, and nothing is going to satisfy you. You can even get sick by it if you don't get it. That's what it became. I couldn't even concentrate in my job and school and everything. My last day of my part-time job, my last day of the first semester of college, I come home and there's a man and his son visiting the family. It was a man that had been working at the same ranch in Visalia. By then my folks had moved to San Jose too. Him and his son were on their way, guess to where?
Alaska.
They were on their way to Alaska. And I'm going, Alaska? You going to Alaska? Are you kidding me? You're going to the last frontier? And I don't know, 3 days later, I'm packed with 3 suitcases of my best business clothes, my high heels. Luckily, I packed 2 pairs of jeans, a pair of tennis shoes, and a little jacket. And I'm on my way to Alaska. We didn't even know where we were going. But this story is something else. And if you want to learn more about this journey and more, guess what I have?
Aww.
I wrote my memoirs. And it's called Following Earth Mother's Heartbeat. because that's what I did all my life. And then especially with my drums, when that gift came from Spirit. So Spirit, I was 23 years old. I'm going to Alaska. We don't know anyone, but I'm going. That's all I knew, is I had to go. And like I said, that story, you go there. It was something else, and I lived up there for 8 years. I landed in Kodiak, Alaska, the island of Kodiak. I became the very first woman to go commercial fishing. In fact, the whole fleet had this lottery going, how long this little woman, this little native woman was gonna last on a fishing boat. I showed them. I lasted 2 years. In fact, there was these big burly guys that came from all over wanting to become fishermen. They lasted 2 weeks and we had to fly them out because they couldn't handle it. It was 24/7 when you're in a fishing boat. There's no weekends or anything, 8 to 5.
Was it cold?
Oh yeah. The winters in Alaska can get very cold. Storms come up like crazy and in 20 minutes you're in a storm.
How did high heels work on the ship?
I got rid of all
I
of
bet
it.
you did.
Yeah. So it was quite an experience and an eye-opener. When they didn't realize, the fishermen and all of that, I came from working in the fields, from sun up to sunset, raising kids, making tortillas, for 3 meals a day for the family. So they didn't stand a chance. So when I left Alaska, my daughter was born there. When I left Alaska, I had already gotten divorced and she was 3 years old. And I didn't want to leave it, but it was time to, go down, and I wanted my daughter to get to know Grandma and Grandpa and her cousins and the family. I said, well, if I'm leaving, I'm driving out. So I bought myself a brand new 1983 Mustang. I had sold my business. I had started a custom picture framing business and taught myself how to do it and put 3 other framers out of business, which I didn't even know, and drove out of the state, almost 3,000 miles from Kodiak, Alaska to San Jose, California. Another journey that is in there, and I ended up, I figured if I'm gonna move back to California, by then it was getting too big, too crowded, already starting to get too crowded. I said, I'm gonna live in the prettiest place that I can think of, not too far from family, so I moved to Monterey, California, the peninsula. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. And we were really happy there, me and my girl. And then 1986, again, Yolanda, you're not listening. What? What do you mean I'm not listening? I'm listening. You're not following your path. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Well, I have a child to support, keep a roof over our heads. I have no help from anybody. So what am I supposed to do? Quit my job, Then Spirit starts telling me, drums, you gotta make a drum. make a drum, make a drum. So in 1986, I start looking into making a drum. I thought, oh, I can make a drum. I remember making one out of an oatmeal box. Remember that? You guys all did that too? I used my dad's inner tubes from the car and cut them and strung them and, oh yeah, I can do that. Okay, Spirit, I'll do it, you know. Well, it wasn't that easy. It took me over a year before I finally surrendered to, the only thing I could think of to use was a redwood planter. Is what I ended up using for my base. I couldn't figure out what to use for the base, you know, on it. I didn't know what they used, rawhide or leather or what. So I went to Tandy Leather. I said, do you have any rawhide? I think we have a salted one in the back. So they bring it out. It's a piece like this and it's straight like salted, you know. The worst thing you can do, you know, for a drum. And so he hands it to me and I look at it and I look at him and he says, soak it in water. He says, what are you doing? I go, I'm making a drum. Oh yeah, soak it in water until it's pliable and you can work with it. Okay, and I go, well, I don't know what am I gonna use for lacings? Cut the lacings from the hide. Oh, thank you, I was so happy. Cause by then I was pulling my hair out. Nothing was coming onto how to make a drum. I thought a drum. So finally I get it done. I take it, show it to my family. Everybody falls in love with my drum. I still have it, my very first drum. And so I'm back in prayer and meditation, and I go, okay, Great Spirit, I did it. I did it, thank you. Man, that was a hard one. I don't want one that hard again, okay? And clear as I'm talking to you, I hear, I said, drums, drums. And I literally threw a tantrum. No, I don't know anything about drums. I'm probably not even supposed to touch a drum. You know, something in my DNA told me this. And I said no to Spirit on everything that Spirit was telling me. You know, you're a teacher, you're a spiritual leader, you're this, you're that. And I'm going, I don't know who you're talking about or what you're saying. And I kept saying no. Well, this was 1987 during the harmonic convergence. I don't know how many of you remember the harmonic convergence. That was the very first major shift, major stargate that opened on Earth Mother. It was the beginning of the 1960s, the Vietnam War, all of that we've been through. And here I am, arguing with Spirit. No, I don't know anything. What am I gonna teach? I didn't even go to college, you know. So, when we don't listen to Spirit, Spirit has a way of getting your attention. By then it's 1989. I had got hired by Chicago Title, and they moved me and my daughter to Modesto. Before I left Monterey, I went to Great Earth Vitamins and bought these vitamins to boost my metabolism because I wanted to lose weight for our vacation to San Felipe in February. You know, so I took them for 2 weeks. Unbeknownst to me, the FDA had already made, you know, demanded that anything and everything with L-tryptophan be pulled off the shelves. That doctors stopped prescribing it because they were prescribing it like crazy for insomnia, for stress. L-tryptophan is a natural relaxant that is, really good. Natural relaxant and for insomnia and stuff, it helps you sleep and everything. Well, this company in Japan changed the way that they processed it, and it became poison. People were dying left and right. Babies, children, parents, grandparents, siblings, and people, they didn't know why or what was happening. And little me, Miss arguing, I went, before I left Monterey, I went to Greater Vitamins, got that bottle, and it was the only bottle missed that they did not pull. And I was taking 1,000 milligrams a day of poison for 2 weeks. And I never got sick, but all of a sudden I'm going down and I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was just tired from the stress at work. I'll be fine after the vacation, I'll be fine. Come back from vacation, my friend that we went with, he always rented an RV for us to drive down to Baja. I laid down when we took off and I never got up. He had to carry me out of the RV. And he laid me on the sofa and I was down for the count. I went to death's door. I lost my hair, I lost the use of my hands. They were clawed like this, I couldn't close them or open them. My spine was curving, my skin was turning hard like wood and dark brown. I lost the sight in this eye, I was losing this eye. I was in a wheelchair because I couldn't walk. I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit because it did damage to my nerve endings. And I was on fire, like I was standing in a bonfire, burning alive, 24/7. And all I wanted to do by the time it was really manifesting, I just wanted to leave. I said a will as to, who I wanted to raise my daughter, who I wanted to get this and that. I gave everything away. And I was ready to go. I was praying, please, please, Great Spirit, take me. I can't handle it anymore. And the one night that I thought I was gonna go, I was hoping I was gonna go. I'm laying in bed and all of a sudden, and I used to see a lot of orbs in my room. In North Carolina, there was a lot of orbs when I lived there. But all of a sudden I see this light and it's coming from that side of the room in my bedroom. And it's getting brighter and brighter. And finally I see that there's a being coming. And as he's approaching, the light's getting brighter. So I kind of sat up in bed. And by the time he got there, I don't know how, but I was sitting up. Whereas before I never could, I'm sitting up and I'm just looking at him and he just starts talking to me. He says, "You are not listening." You are not paying attention. You have forgotten who you are. And as I don't understand, I hear what you've been saying, I don't understand, I don't know anything. And he says, you need to remember who you are, where you come from, what we taught you. Cause they would wake me up as far back as I can remember. I think as far back as when I could get up and walk. They would wake me up in the middle of the night. I would open the door. I could hear my family all sleeping. Open the door, walk out of the house, and take off walking along the irrigation ditch, always the irrigation ditch. I guess the water was tied into it somehow. But that's a different story.
In the book.
In the book. And that went on till I graduated high school. And now I just know they're here and I listen to them and get their guidance too. But Spirit, says you have to wake up. You have to. You are not going anywhere. And nobody else is going to raise your daughter. Because only you, she chose you to teach her what you know. And that's when I just lost it, and I just sat there and I go, okay, I surrender. I surrender. I said, but I don't know anything about drums. We will help you. We will teach you. You just need to wake up and listen and trust yourself. When you trust yourself, you trust us. Because who knows better than us what we need, how we're feeling, what we know? Nobody here. Everybody here on earth is the same as we are. We're all here to learn. We're all exploring and learning and growing as we walk our path. So I surrendered and I go, okay, I guess I'm not gonna die. Okay, the pain is still here, but I know I'm gonna make it. And the next day I crawled to my recliner. I had bought my very first little house, a 790 square foot house. And I had gotten this recliner when I started getting sick, and it was like a pillow. So it was the only place I could be in. I would sit there and not move all day. And it was me by myself as my little girl. She was 8 and 9. And to get off to school, she had to do everything herself because I couldn't. But this lesson, going through this, is when I learned about my body, is when I learned about herbs, is when I learned about water. I paid attention to all this growing up. But like I said, it's like we get into a fog as we get older. But I would not go to the hospital. My mom and dad, my family, please, you gotta go. No, I'm not gonna go to the hospital. If I would have gone in, I wouldn't be here. Because all they kept giving me was more and more pain medication. When they finally figured out what was going on, I said, okay, and I found the bottle. It was poison. They had sent it off to the lab. I go to the doctor and I go, okay, now that we know what's going on, what's the cure? There is no cure. That's when my heart, everything just hit the floor. But then after I had the visitation, I decided, I'm not going anywhere, so I guess I gotta cure myself. So I went on a mission, and I started my goal from that recliner. I'm gonna walk to the door, the front door, which was about right there, every morning after my daughter left, I'd walk to the door and then walk back. Every day, and I would go a little further, and then finally I was able to open that door. Finally, I was able to open the screen door and step out long enough to just walk back in. Then I could sit out front on the porch. And this is how I brought myself back. Between me seeing myself back to 100%. Me seeing me working in the yard, riding my bike, picking cotton, you know, everything. I visioned myself back. It took me 10 years before I uttered the words, I'm starting to feel like myself. It was 15 years before I said, I think I'm back. But on that journey, I discovered food grade peroxide. I would use it to take baths. And the first time that I took a bath in that, you know how when you put peroxide and it foams up? I was so full of toxins, when I got in, the whole bathtub. That's how bad I was. And a friend of mine took me, Alan, that got the spirit song. He used to do sweat lodges and ceremonies. He says, there's a herbalist in town that I think can help you. So he took me to the herbal shop, and I told her my story, what happened. And she says to me, the poison is eating you from the inside out. You need to detox your blood. And I said, well, how do I do that? She says, I will give you a recipe. And it was a recipe of like about 8 herbs. And guess where it is?
In the book.
But guess what? I brought it for you guys.
Yay.
If you want it. Thank you. My story and the recipe, the detox tea, how to take it, what not to use. You can't use aluminum when you're boiling the water. You fast with this tea and it is bitter. Oh my God. It was so hard for me between what I was going through and then not being able to eat, which I couldn't eat anyway. So you have to fast for at least 3 days starting out. And any more past that, the better. And I drank the tea, water, and any juice without sugar, natural juice without sugar. And this saved my life. It got the poison out of my body. And I did this for years. And with there not being any cure, guess what I had to take? Steroids. They put me on high doses of prednisone that I was on for over a year and a half. So, I told my doctor, so one poison is killing me and you're telling me I have to take another poison? And like he said, it's the only thing that's slowing it down. He says, as soon as we can find a cure, you'll be the first one to know. But I didn't wait. I started my own routine. And this tells us that, listen, your body is talking to you. Your body tells you what it needs every day. It's not easy, but we can get ourselves back on track. We can. I mean, if I could do it, anybody can do it. If you're determined and you really want to live this life healthy and strong, happy to the end, right? You wanna arm wrestle?
No, you make drums.
Yeah, the drums, that was another gift, you know? That was a journey in itself, and guess where? You know, and I was right, women were not supposed to be touching drums. And here I am, and Spirit tells me it's time to come out with the drums. And I had to do it. I didn't argue. But every powwow I went to for the first 4 years, the elders would confront me. Who gave you permission to touch a drum, let alone make a drum? This is all I did. I said, and if you know of a higher power that can tell me I'm not supposed to, I will stop. Every time. Nice drums. But we are powerful beings. We are. We're magical. We're magicians. And I've gone way over my time. I think, I don't know. But I wanna share a song that came to me the very first time that I went walking when I came back home. And I titled it, We're Creators. And it goes like this. It's the morning, early morning, and we greet another day. Life is waiting, anticipating, what will we create today? We're creators of this journey as we walk our path each day. Make it joyous, being grateful that you woke again today. Earth Mother's waiting for us to love her and see the gifts she gives us every day. We need to wake up, we need to remember and make the changes we need to make. It's the morning, early morning, and we greet another day. Life is waiting, anticipating, what will we create today? We're creators of this journey as we walk our path each day. Make it joyous, being grateful that you woke again today. Great Spirit loves you, Earth Mother needs you to understand who you really are. We are creators, we are the power, we are awakened and know our strength. It's the morning, early morning, and we greet another day. Life is waiting, anticipating, what will we create today? We're creators of this journey as we walk our path each day. Make it joyous, being grateful that you woke again today. Okay, it's all yours now.
All right. Oh, that was so wonderful. I have to give you a hug. Thank you for your gifts, your stories, your songs. They move through all of us. Thank you, Lord Yolanda.
You're so welcome. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, we love to have you here.